you felt it. Maybe it came quietly, the way light shifts in a room before you realize the sun has moved. Or maybe it came like a current, sudden, electric, unmistakable, a feeling that something in you had reorganized at a level you couldn't name but couldn't deny. You woke up one morning and the person you were yesterday felt like a costume you'd already taken off. The thoughts that used to loop didn't loop the same way. The things that used to pull at you had lost their grip. And somewhere in your chest, beneath whatever words you might reach for to describe it, there was this quiet, irreversible knowing. Something shifted. Not gradually, not incrementally, not the way habits change or opinions soften over time. This was different. This was structural, like a frequency that had been building for months, maybe years, finally crossing a threshold, and in crossing it, becoming something new, something that cannot go back. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what happened to your energy field. Because what you felt was real. More real than most of the explanations you've been offered for experiences like this. What you experienced was not a mood shift, not a mindset change, not a chapter turning in the story of your personality. What happened was a measurable electromagnetic reorganization of the field that surrounds you, permeates you, and broadcasts who you are to the quantum world at every moment. Your aura changed frequency. And when an aura changes frequency, genuinely, completely, at the level of the electromagnetic signal your heart and nervous system are generating, it doesn't drift back. It doesn't return to its old configuration any more than a caterpillar returns to being a caterpillar after it has already become a butterfly. The physics don't allow it. The field doesn't permit it. And the you that existed at the old frequency, that version of you has already dissolved. Not dramatically, not with ceremony, but completely. Your old self is gone. And I want to show you why that is the most extraordinary thing that could have happened to you. Because here is what most people don't understand about the human energy field. Most people think of transformation as a psychological event, a shift in thinking, a change in perspective, a new belief replacing an old one. And while those things are real and they matter, they are downstream of something far more fundamental. Thought is a product of frequency. Belief is a pattern that lives in your field before it ever becomes a conscious idea. What you think, what you attract, what you notice, what reaches you, and what doesn't. All of it is determined first by the electromagnetic signature your body is generating and broadcasting into the quantum field around you. Before you think a thought, your field is already tuned to a frequency. Before you make a choice, your aura has already broadcast a signal that is either coherent or fragmented, open or contracted, radiant or dim. And when that field reorganizes, when it crosses from one fundamental frequency to another, everything changes. Not because you decided to change, not because you worked hard enough or believed strongly enough, but because the physics of your personal energy field shifted, because your electromagnetic signature became something new, because your aura is now broadcasting on a completely different wavelength than it was before. You switched from AM to FM, and everyone around you already knows it. They can feel it in your presence. They can feel it in the quality of silence when you walk into a room. They don't have words for what changed, but they know something did. Your light got brighter. Your field got stronger. And there is no dimmer switch. So let's go all the way into this. Let's look at what your energy field actually is, what it's been doing your entire life without your conscious direction, what it means that it has now shifted, and how you can work with this new frequency consciously, because a conscious broadcast is infinitely more powerful than an unconscious one. And you are now at the threshold of broadcasting consciously for the first time. Your aura is not a spiritual concept. I want to be very clear about this because the word aura carries so much cultural weight. Some of it beautiful, some of it that makes scientifically minded people dismiss the whole conversation before it starts. And I don't want you to dismiss this, because this is too important, too real, too relevant to your actual life and what's actually happening in your field right now. Your aura is a measurable electromagnetic field. The HeartMath Institute, a research organization that has been studying the electrophysiology of the heart since the early 1990s, has documented extensively that the human heart generates the most powerful electromagnetic field in the body, a field that extends several feet beyond the physical body in every direction. Not inches, feet. And this field carries information. It encodes the emotional and physiological state of the person generating it. It changes in measurable ways based on what that person is feeling, thinking, and experiencing. And it can be detected by other people's nervous systems, and even other people's hearts, without any conscious communication happening at all. This is not speculation. This is measured, documented, peer-reviewed science. Your heart is not just a pump. It is a sophisticated electromagnetic broadcasting station. And the signal it generates, the field it creates, is what ancient traditions across every culture on Earth have always called the aura, the luminous energy field, the halo, the radiance, the light body. Every tradition that has ever spoken about the human energy field was pointing at the same measurable phenomenon, describing it in the language available to them. You have always been radiating. Since the moment your heart began beating, somewhere around 3 weeks after conception, before your brain had even formed, you have been generating an electromagnetic field. You have been broadcasting a signal. You have been radiating a frequency that the world around you reads and responds to. Every single day of your life, without pause, without rest, without your conscious permission or direction, your energy field has been transmitting. And most of that transmission has been unconscious. This is the part that matters most. This is the part that explains so much about your life, about what has reached you and what hasn't, about who has been drawn to you and who has drifted away, about the patterns that have repeated themselves in ways that seemed to defy logic or intention. Your field has been broadcasting your actual frequency, not the frequency you wished you were at, not the frequency you presented to the world through your words and your choices and your carefully maintained self-image. Your actual frequency, the one generated by the sum total of your conditioning, your unprocessed experiences, your inherited beliefs, your unconscious fears, your suppressed knowing. The quantum field doesn't read your intentions. It reads your signal. And your signal is the electromagnetic frequency your heart and nervous system are actually generating, not the one you think you're generating. This is why people can work so hard at changing their lives, setting goals, taking action, repeating affirmations, doing all the right things, and still find that the same patterns keep returning. Not because they aren't trying, because they haven't changed their signal. The field is still broadcasting the old frequency, and the quantum field, which is fundamentally a field of resonance, which responds to what it detects, not what it's told, keeps assembling reality around the old broadcast. But here is what happens when the signal genuinely changes. Here is what happens when your electromagnetic field reorganizes at the fundamental level. When your aura shifts frequency, not as a performance or an aspiration, but as an actual, measurable change in what your heart and nervous system are generating. Everything that was assembled around the old frequency becomes incompatible with the new one. People who resonated with your old signal start to feel the mismatch. Situations that fit your old field start to feel foreign. Patterns that perpetuated themselves through your old broadcast lose their mechanism. And simultaneously, things that could never reach you at the old frequency, people, opportunities, synchronicities, insights, relationships, the kind of life that felt possible only in your most luminous moments, begin to move toward you. Because now, your field is broadcasting a frequency they can find. This is not magic. This is resonance. This is quantum mechanics applied to the most personal instrument you possess. And this is what happened to you. Your field shifted. Your aura reorganized. Your signal changed. And reality is already beginning to respond. Now let me show you something about how this actually works at the quantum level, because understanding the mechanics of your own field is one of the most empowering things you can do right now. When you understand how your aura works, you stop being a passive broadcaster and become a conscious one. And that shift from unconscious to conscious radiance is where your real power begins. If this is resonating with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe so we can keep exploring this together. Quantum physics tells us something extraordinary about the nature of reality that most people never fully integrate into their understanding of their own lives. The quantum field, the fundamental substrate of physical reality, does not behave like a fixed, predetermined landscape that you navigate. It behaves like a field of infinite probability, a vast ocean of potential states, none of which collapse into actual experience until they are observed, until they interact with a consciousness, until they are detected by a field. Your field. The observer effect, one of the most rigorously documented phenomena in quantum physics, tells us that the act of observation changes what is observed. That the presence of a measuring instrument, of a consciousness, of a field that is sensitive to and interacting with quantum states determines which possibility becomes real. This is not a philosophical position. This is laboratory verified physics. Particles behave differently when observed than when not observed. Reality responds to the presence of a conscious field. Your aura is that field. Your electromagnetic signature is your quantum observation instrument. It is the field through which you interact with the probability space of reality. And the frequency of your field determines which probabilities you are sensitive to, which potential realities your consciousness can detect, collapse, and therefore experience. At a low, fragmented, incoherent frequency, your field is sensitive to a narrow band of possibilities, the ones that match your fear, your limitation, your old conditioning. Not because those are the only possibilities that exist, because those are the only ones your field can detect. You can only collapse into experience what your field can observe. And a contracted, low coherence field observes a contracted, low probability reality. At a high, coherent, radiant frequency, the frequency your field is now moving toward, your field becomes sensitive to an exponentially wider band of possibilities. Things that were literally invisible to you before become observable. Opportunities that existed in the probability space but could never be detected by your old signal suddenly become real. Not because the world changed, because your field changed. Because you are now observing a wider, richer, more luminous slice of what was always there. This is what it means when we say your aura shapes your reality. It's not mystical. It's not wishful thinking. It's quantum mechanics applied to the most personal, most powerful field generator you possess, your own heart. And now, let's talk about what your field has actually been broadcasting. Because this is the part that requires a particular kind of courage. Not the dramatic courage of grand gestures or radical decisions. The quiet courage of honest self-observation. The willingness to look at your own signal clearly, without shame, without judgment, but with the kind of clear-eyed understanding that makes change not just possible, but inevitable. For most people, most of the time, the aura broadcasts a mixture of frequencies. And within that mixture, there are often dominant patterns, recurring electromagnetic signatures that the field has been trained into by experience, by conditioning, by the accumulated weight of everything that happened before you knew you were a broadcaster. There is the frequency of inherited limitation. The signal that was running in your family's field before you were born, that you absorbed through the electromagnetic environment of your earliest years. That became the baseline tone of your own field before you had any capacity to choose otherwise. The frequency that says there is not enough, that safety requires smallness, that wanting more than what you have is dangerous, that the world is fundamentally a place of scarcity and threat. There is the frequency of unprocessed experience. the electromagnetic imprint of moments that overwhelmed your nervous system's capacity to integrate. Moments of loss, of rejection, of betrayal, of fear that were stored not just as memories, but as persistent patterns in your field. Frequencies that your aura has been broadcasting as warnings, as contractions, as signals that say approach with caution, that say I am not safe to be fully open, that say the last time I shone too brightly, something bad happened. There is the frequency of performed identity, the signal generated not by who you actually are, but by who you learned to be in order to be accepted, loved, valued, included. The electromagnetic signature of the self you constructed to survive your environment rather than the self that was there before the construction began. This frequency is particularly interesting because it creates a kind of static in the field, an incoherence that comes from broadcasting two signals simultaneously, the performed signal and the real one. And that static is exhausting. It costs you enormous energy, and it creates a kind of interference pattern in your aura that makes it very difficult for the quantum field to read you clearly. When the quantum field can't read you clearly, it defaults to assembling reality around your loudest signal. And your loudest signal is usually your fear. This is why so many people who are genuinely trying to create better lives find themselves stuck in the same patterns. Not because they are doing anything wrong, because their field is broadcasting two signals at once, the conscious aspiration and the unconscious fear. And the fear is louder. The fear has been in the field longer. The fear has deeper electromagnetic roots. And the quantum field responds to the stronger signal. But here is what changes when your aura shifts frequency. When your field reorganizes at a fundamental level, when the coherence of your electromagnetic signature increases, when the dominant frequency of your broadcast shifts from fear and fragmentation to something more open, more luminous, more aligned with what you actually are beneath all the conditioning, the static clears. The interference pattern dissolves, and your signal becomes clean. A clean signal is the most powerful thing you can broadcast. Not a perfect signal, not a signal without complexity or depth. A clean one where what you're broadcasting is actually what you are, where your electromagnetic signature is coherent enough that the quantum field can read it clearly and respond to it accurately, where reality begins to assemble around your actual frequency rather than around the noise between your frequencies. And this is what has happened in your field. The static is clearing. The interference pattern is dissolving. The frequencies that were imposed on you, inherited, conditioned, accumulated, are losing their dominance in your broadcast. And what is emerging, what is becoming the primary signal of your aura, is something that was always there, but couldn't be heard above the noise. Your original frequency. The electromagnetic signature you were generating before the world taught you to dim it. Your light is on. It has always been on. What shifted is that the things that were covering it, the layers of conditioning, the frequencies of fear, the static of performed identity, have reached a threshold where they can no longer maintain their dominance in your field. And your original radiance is reasserting itself, not as something new, as something remembered, something recovered, something that was always yours. Let me tell you about Mara. Mara had spent 37 years being extraordinarily good at being ordinary. Not ordinary in any small or dismissive sense. She was brilliant, capable, deeply feeling. Someone whose presence in a room changed the quality of the air, even when she was doing her best to take up as little space as possible, which was most of the time. She had learned early the way children learn things that are never spoken directly, but are transmitted through the electromagnetic field of the people who raise them, that her brightness was a problem. Not through cruelty, through the accumulated signal of a family that had survived by staying small. Her mother's field broadcast caution. Her father's field broadcast a kind of resigned competence. And Mara, who was sensitive to fields the way some people are sensitive to weather, absorbed those frequencies into her own developing aura and built her life around them. She was careful. She was measured. She was skilled at anticipating what was needed and providing it before anyone had to ask. She was the person everyone relied on, and no one truly saw. And she had made a kind of peace with this, the way you make peace with a room that doesn't have enough windows. You stop noticing the dimness after a while. It just becomes the quality of the light you live in. But something had been building in Mara's field for 2 years before it crossed the threshold. She couldn't have told you exactly when it started. Maybe it was the morning she sat in a meeting and realized she had not said a single true thing in 3 hours. Maybe it was the evening she drove home and felt, for just a moment, a quality of grief so total it seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her personal history. Maybe it was the night she lay awake and felt her own heartbeat and had the sudden vertiginous sense that the heart beating in her chest was not the heart of the person she had been presenting to the world. That the person she had been presenting to the world was a frequency she had learned to generate, and beneath it, generating quietly, persistently, with the patience of something that knows it is real and will wait as long as necessary, was her actual signal. The shift happened on a Tuesday. Mara would later say there was nothing special about the Tuesday. No catalyst she could point to. No dramatic event. She simply woke up and something in her field had crossed a line it could not recross. The frequencies she had spent 37 years maintaining, the careful smallness, the performed ordinariness, the electromagnetic signature of a woman who had decided that survival required dimming, had exhausted themselves. They had run out of the energy required to maintain their dominance in her field. And in the space that opened, her original frequency came forward. She noticed it first in her body, a quality of aliveness that felt almost unfamiliar, a warmth in her chest that wasn't emotional in the usual sense, more like a physical brightening. She noticed it in the way she spoke that day. She said true things without planning to, without calculating whether they were safe to say. She noticed it in the way people responded to her. Her assistant, who had worked with her for 4 years, stopped in the middle of a conversation and said, "You seem different today. Not better or worse, different." As if she had become more visible. That was exactly right. She had become more visible. Not because she had done anything differently, because her field had stopped hiding. In the weeks that followed, Mara experienced the full spectrum of what happens when an aura shifts frequency. Some of it was disorienting. Relationships that had been stable for years became suddenly uncomfortable, not because anything dramatic happened, but because the people in those relationships had been in resonance with her old frequency, and her new signal felt foreign to them. She lost 2 friendships she had thought were permanent. She found herself unable to maintain conversations that had previously felt normal. Conversations that were really just elaborate agreements to keep the shadows on the wall. Some of it was extraordinary. A project she had been quietly passionate about for years, but had never pursued, suddenly moved forward with a momentum that felt almost effortless. Not because the obstacles disappeared, but because she was no longer broadcasting the frequency of someone who expected to be stopped. Opportunities appeared in her field that she had not sought and could not have predicted. A person entered her life whose electromagnetic signature was so clearly resonant with her new frequency that the recognition between them was immediate and physical, not romantic, but something deeper. The recognition of two fields that had been broadcasting compatible signals and had finally come within range of each other. And Mara understood something she had not understood before. She had not become someone new. She had become someone real. The transformation was not the addition of something she hadn't had. It was the removal of everything that had been covering what she already was. The frequency that was now dominant in her field was not a frequency she had built or achieved or earned. It was the frequency she had been born generating before the world taught her to dim it. Your light is not something you create. It is something you uncover. And the uncovering, the moment when the layers of conditioning and inherited frequency can no longer maintain their dominance in your field, that is what happened to you. Now let's do something with this understanding. Because knowing that your field has shifted is one thing. Working with that shift consciously, learning to inhabit your new frequency deliberately, to strengthen it, to direct it, to broadcast it with the full coherence of a conscious radiator, that is where your real power activates. This is a radiance practice. And I want you to actually do this, not as a visualization exercise, not as a meditation technique, as an electromagnetic reality. Because what we are doing here is not imagining your energy field. We are working with it directly. We are using the very real connection between your conscious attention, your breath, your heart's electromagnetic activity, and the coherence of your aura to deliberately strengthen and clarify your signal. Find a position where your spine can be long and your chest can be open. You don't need to be rigid, just available, just spacious enough that your heart has room to broadcast without compression. Take a breath that goes all the way down into your belly, and as you exhale, let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let the muscles around your eyes release. You're not preparing for something. You're arriving somewhere. You're arriving in your own field. Now bring your attention to your heart, not the organ. Though the organ is the generator, bring your attention to the center of your chest, the place where you feel things before you think them, the place where recognition lives, the place where your electromagnetic signal is strongest. And just notice what's there. Don't try to change it yet. Don't try to make it better or bigger or more radiant. just notice the quality of what's radiating from your heart center right now. Is it warm? Is it contracted? Is it buzzing with something that wants to expand? Is it quiet with a kind of deep aliveness? Whatever is there, it's your signal. It's your current broadcast, and it's perfect to start from exactly here. Now take another breath, and this time, as you inhale, imagine that you are drawing in the frequency of your new self, not the old frequency, not the frequency of limitation or fear or performed identity, the frequency that emerged when your field shifted, the one that feels more like you than anything you've broadcast before. Let that breath fill your chest. Let it warm your heart center. Let it begin to expand outward from the center of your chest in every direction, forward, backward, to both sides, upward, downward. Your electromagnetic field actually does extend in all these directions. The HeartMath Institute has measured this. Your heart's field radiates spherically, and as you breathe with intention, as you bring conscious attention to your heart center, the coherence of that field increases measurably. You are not imagining this. You are doing it. As you exhale, let that frequency radiate. Let it move outward through your field. Let it reach the edges of your aura, and then let it go beyond them. Let it broadcast into the quantum field around you. This is your signal. This is your actual electromagnetic signature, and it is coherent. It is clear. It is the frequency of someone who has crossed a threshold and cannot go back. Stay here for a moment, just breathing, just radiating, just letting your field broadcast its new frequency into the world around you. Notice what happens in your body as you do this. There may be warmth in your chest. There may be a tingling in your hands or along your skin. That is your electromagnetic field becoming more active, more coherent, more present. There may be a quality of expansion, as if the space you occupy has grown. It has. Your field has grown. Your aura is expanding as its coherence increases. This is what it feels like to broadcast consciously. This is what it feels like to be a conscious radiator instead of an unconscious one. And I want you to notice something else. As your field becomes more coherent, as your signal becomes cleaner and stronger, there is a quality of peace that comes with it. Not the peace of nothing happening, the peace of something being exactly right. the piece of a signal that is finally broadcasting what it actually is, without interference, without static, without the exhausting effort of maintaining frequencies that were never truly yours. This is your natural state. This is what your field feels like when it is coherent and free. Remember this feeling. This is your new baseline. This is the frequency you are returning to every time you return to your own field. Now let's go deeper into what your aura is actually doing in your life, because there are layers to this that most people never discover about their own energy field. And each layer reveals something more extraordinary about what you are capable of as a conscious broadcaster. The first layer most people understand is attraction. The idea that your field draws to you what matches your frequency. And this is real. It is quantum resonance in the most personal terms. But it is only the first layer. The second layer is protection. Your electromagnetic field, when it is coherent, when it is generating a clean, strong, high-frequency signal, functions as a protective field in ways that go beyond the metaphorical. Research on heart coherence has shown that individuals with high heart coherence, measured by the rhythmic, ordered pattern of their heart rate variability, demonstrate measurably different physiological responses to stress. Their nervous systems recover more quickly. Their immune function is stronger. Their cognitive performance under pressure is higher. Their emotional regulation is more fluid. But beyond the physiological, there is something happening at the quantum level that is equally significant. A coherent, high-frequency field creates what we might call a resonance boundary. Not a wall. Walls are rigid and brittle and require energy to maintain. A resonance boundary is something more elegant. It is a field condition in which frequencies that are incompatible with your signal simply cannot find purchase in your aura. They don't resonate with what you're broadcasting. They move through your field without sticking, without taking root, without being able to reorganize your signal around their frequency. This is why people who have genuinely elevated their field coherence seem to move through difficult environments with a quality of grace that others around them don't have. It's not that their lives are free of challenge. It's that the challenges don't penetrate their field the way they once did. The low-frequency events, the draining interactions, the environments of fear and scarcity, they encounter these things, but they don't absorb them the way they used to. Their field is too coherent to be reorganized by an incompatible frequency. This is protection at the quantum level. And it is one of the most significant gifts of an elevated aura. The third layer is transmission. Your field doesn't just attract and protect. It transmits. It actively influences the fields of everything and everyone it comes into contact with. And this is perhaps the most extraordinary layer of your aura's function, and the one that carries the most responsibility. The HeartMath Institute has documented something they call field-to-field communication, the measurable transfer of information between one person's electromagnetic field and another's. When two people are in proximity, their fields interact. And when one person's field is highly coherent, when their heart is generating a strong, ordered, high-frequency electromagnetic signal, that coherence can actually entrain the fields of the people around them. Entrainment is a physics phenomenon. It occurs when two oscillating systems come into proximity, and the weaker oscillator begins to synchronize with the stronger one. You've seen it with pendulum clocks. Place two pendulum clocks on the same wall, and within a few hours, their pendulums will be swinging in synchrony. The stronger rhythm entrained the weaker one, not through force, through resonance. Your heart is a pendulum. And when your heart is generating a coherent, high-frequency rhythm, it becomes an entraining force for the hearts of the people around you. Their nervous systems begin to synchronize with yours. Their fields begin to move toward the coherence that your field is modeling. Not because you are doing anything intentional, not because you are trying to influence them, simply because your field is broadcasting a coherent signal, and theirs is responding to it. This is why certain people make you feel calmer, safer, more alive, simply by being in the room. Not because of anything they say or do, because their field is broadcasting a frequency your nervous system recognizes as coherent, as safe, as resonant with something true. And your field begins to entrain to theirs. And now, this is important. This is what your field is doing to the people around you. Your elevated frequency is not a private experience. It is a transmission. Every person who comes within range of your aura receives information from your field. Every person whose nervous system comes into contact with your electromagnetic signature is influenced by its coherence. You are not just changing your own experience of reality by elevating your field. You are changing the experience of everyone whose field intersects with yours. This is the responsibility that comes with conscious radiance, and it is also the gift. Because a single person broadcasting at a high, coherent frequency can literally shift the field of a room, can change the quality of the electromagnetic environment that everyone in that room is experiencing can make it easier for other people's fields to find coherence simply by being present and radiating consciously. You are not just a receiver. You are a transmitter. And the signal you are now transmitting, the elevated, coherent, cleared frequency of your shifted aura, is a gift to every field it touches. I want to pause here and ask you something, because this community is itself a field, and your experience matters to it. Have you ever felt your own aura shift? A moment when people responded to your energy differently? When you walked into a room and something in the atmosphere changed? When you felt the warmth of your own field activating in a way you couldn't quite explain? Share it in the comments. Your story carries the frequency of your field, and reading it is a transmission to everyone here who is approaching their own threshold. Now let me show you something about the nature of this shift that most people never fully understand. Because there is a quality to what you're experiencing that goes beyond frequency elevation. There is something about the irreversibility of this particular kind of shift that deserves its own exploration. Why can't you go back? This is a real question, and it deserves a real answer, because it's not just a motivational statement. It's not just an empowering claim. There is a genuine physics to why certain frequency shifts in the human energy field are irreversible. And understanding it will help you work with your new frequency rather than against it. Think about what happens when water reaches 100 degrees Celsius. Below that threshold, it is liquid. At that threshold, it becomes vapor. And vapor does not spontaneously return to liquid without a significant change in the conditions, without cooling, without compression, without an external intervention that fundamentally alters the environment. Your aura operates on a similar principle. For most of your life, your field has been operating below a certain threshold of coherence. Not because you were doing anything wrong, because the frequencies that were dominant in your broadcast, the inherited limitations, the unprocessed experiences, the static of performed identity, were keeping your field's coherence below the threshold at which certain changes become permanent. But frequency coherence, like temperature, is cumulative. Every moment of genuine presence, every experience of authentic emotion fully felt, every time you chose truth over performance, every time your heart opened fully without armor, all of it added to the coherence of your field, incrementally, gradually, often invisibly, until the threshold was reached. And at the threshold, something happens that is qualitatively different from everything that happened before it. The field doesn't just get slightly more coherent. It reorganizes. It shifts into a new configuration. A configuration that is self-sustaining at the new frequency in a way that the old configuration was not. Like water becoming vapor, the new state has different properties than the old one, different dynamics, different relationships with the environment around it. And returning to the old state requires more than just stopping the practices that elevated you. It requires an active, sustained, effortful reversal, a deliberate return to the conditions that maintained the old frequency. And here is the extraordinary thing about human consciousness. Once you have genuinely experienced your own field at a higher coherence, once you have felt the difference between broadcasting from fear and broadcasting from your actual frequency, you know the difference. You can feel the difference, and returning to the old state requires you to override that knowing, requires you to choose actively and repeatedly to go back to the cage when you have already seen the open sky. Some people do this. It is possible, but it is not natural. It is not easy. And it is not what happens when a shift is genuine. When a shift is genuine, when your field has actually crossed the threshold, the new frequency becomes the path of least resistance. Staying in your elevated field becomes easier than contracting back into the old one. Radiating consciously becomes more natural than dimming. And the old patterns, when they arise, because they will arise, because the old frequencies don't disappear overnight, they fade. They feel like what they are: foreign, ill-fitting, like a coat you've outgrown that you can still put on, but that no longer fits the body wearing it. You can't go back because you know too much. Not intellectually. Electromagnetically. Your field has tasted its own coherence. Your heart has broadcast its own true frequency. And that experience is now encoded in your aura as a reference point, a signal your field can return to, a frequency your heart knows how to generate. You've been glowing this whole time. Now you get to see it. And seeing it changes everything. Let me tell you about something that happens in the quantum field when a person's aura shifts frequency that most people never learn about. Something that explains a phenomenon you've probably noticed. The way that when your energy changes, your outer world seems to reorganize itself in ways that feel almost uncannily responsive. Quantum physics describes a phenomenon called non-locality, the property of quantum systems to be correlated across space in ways that cannot be explained by any local mechanism. Two particles that have interacted become entangled. And once entangled, what happens to one particle instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance between them, not with a time delay. Instantly, as if the space between them doesn't exist. Your energy field, through the interactions it has had, through every genuine connection, every moment of authentic resonance with another person, every experience that left an electromagnetic imprint, has created a web of quantum entanglements. Your field is non-locally connected to the fields of people, places, and patterns that have been in genuine resonance with it. When your field shifts frequency, those entanglements feel it instantly. This is why, when your aura changes, the people in your life feel it before you've said a word, before you've changed your behavior or your communication or your choices. Their fields are entangled with yours, and the shift in your signal reaches them through the non-local connection. They feel something different in your presence. They may not be able to name it. They may respond to it in ways that seem disproportionate or surprising. But they are responding to a real signal, the signal of your changed field reaching theirs through the quantum entanglement that exists between you. And this is also why synchronicities begin to increase when your field shifts. When your aura reorganizes to a higher frequency, the quantum entanglements that were dormant, connections that existed in the field but couldn't be activated at your old frequency, begin to come alive. Things that were waiting for your signal to reach a certain coherence before they could manifest begin to move. People who were always in your quantum field, but out of range of your old broadcast, suddenly come within range. Opportunities that existed in the probability space, but required your elevated frequency to be observable, begin to collapse into actual experience. Reality is not reorganizing itself around you. Reality is responding to your signal. And your signal is now broadcasting at a frequency that can receive what was always there. This is the part where I want to ask you something directly. Because this is a community, a field of conscious radiators who are doing this work together. And the field of this community is itself a quantum reality. When you bring your awareness, your practice, your genuine engagement to this space, you add to the coherence of the collective field. And that coherence amplifies everyone. So here is what I want to know. When did you first feel it? When was the moment, or the series of moments, when you knew that something in your field had irreversibly shifted? When did you first feel the frequency change? When did you first notice that the old patterns were losing their grip? That the old frequencies were no longer dominant in your broadcast? Tell me in the comments. Tell the community. Because your story is not just your story. It is a data point in the collective understanding of how human energy fields evolve. It is a transmission to everyone who reads it, a signal from a field that has crossed the threshold, reaching the fields of people who are approaching their own threshold. Your story has electromagnetic weight. Your words carry the frequency of your field, and sharing them here is an act of conscious radiance. Your light is on. Let it be seen. Now let's go into the final and deepest layer of what your shifted aura means for your life going forward. Because everything we've explored so far, the quantum mechanics of your field, the physics of frequency shift, the irreversibility of genuine threshold crossing, the transmission and protection your elevated aura provides, all of it is preparation for this, for what it means to live as a conscious radiator. Because this is where the real transformation begins. Not in the shift itself. The shift was the beginning. The real transformation is in what you do with your new frequency, now that you know you have it. Now that you understand what your aura is, how it works, what it's broadcasting, and why the shift you've experienced is real and permanent. Living as a conscious radiator means making a fundamental choice that most people never make. The choice to take responsibility for your signal. Not in a heavy, burdensome way, in the way that a lighthouse takes responsibility for its light. Not because it is trying to guide ships, because that is what it is. Because it cannot be a lighthouse without shining. Because shining is its nature and its function and its contribution to everything that moves through the waters around it. You are a lighthouse. Your field is always on. Your aura is always broadcasting. The only question is whether you are broadcasting consciously or unconsciously, whether you are directing your signal with intention or letting it be shaped by default by whatever frequencies are loudest in your environment. Whether you are a conscious radiator or an unconscious one. And the difference between those two is not small. A conscious radiator understands that their emotional state is not just a private experience. It is a broadcast. Every state of genuine joy, of authentic love, of deep peace, of expansive creativity, these states generate coherent, high-frequency electromagnetic signals that radiate from your field and influence the quantum environment around you. And every state of genuine fear, of authentic anger, of deep grief, these states also broadcast. They are not wrong. They are not signals to suppress or perform your way past, but they are broadcasts. And a conscious radiator knows this. A conscious radiator feels their emotions fully, processes them completely, and does not let them calcify into the dominant frequency of their field. A conscious radiator tends their field the way a gardener tends a garden, not by forcing it to grow in a particular direction, by creating the condition in which its natural luminosity can flourish, by removing what is blocking the light, by watering what is genuinely alive, by having the wisdom to know the difference between a weed and a seed. What blocks your light? This is the most important question a conscious radiator can ask. Not what can I add to my field to make it brighter, but what is currently blocking the radiance that is already there. Because your luminosity is not something you build. It is something you uncover. The light is already present. It has always been present. What dims it is what has been placed over it. The frequencies of fear and limitation and performed identity that have accumulated in your field over a lifetime of unconscious broadcasting. And the work of a conscious radiator is largely the work of removal, of clearing, of dissolving the frequencies that are not yours, so that the frequency that is yours can radiate freely. This work takes many forms. Sometimes it is the work of honest self-examination, looking clearly at the patterns in your life and asking what frequency is generating them. Not with self-blame, with the curiosity of a scientist examining data. If this pattern keeps appearing in my field, what signal am I broadcasting that is attracting it? What frequency in my aura is resonant with this experience? And what would it take to shift that frequency? Sometimes it is the work of embodiment, of bringing your consciousness into your body and your field in a way that most people never do. Because the body is the instrument of your field. Your heart is the generator of your aura, and you cannot fully tend your field from the neck up. You have to inhabit your body consciously, feel it, breathe it, move it, listen to it, to have access to the full depth of your electromagnetic broadcast. Sometimes it is the work of relationship, of choosing with increasing consciousness whose fields you spend time in, because your field is always in conversation with the fields around you, always being influenced by the frequencies it encounters. And while a coherent, elevated field has significant protection against being entrained to lower frequencies, that protection is not absolute. Sustained exposure to low coherence fields, to environments of chronic fear, of persistent negativity, of electromagnetic chaos, does affect your signal. Not permanently, but enough to require tending. A conscious radiator is discerning about their electromagnetic environment, not in a fearful, avoidant way, in the way that someone who understands their instrument is discerning about the conditions in which they play it. A violin player doesn't take their instrument into a rainstorm and then wonder why it won't stay in tune. A conscious radiator doesn't immerse themselves indefinitely in environments of energetic chaos and then wonder why their field feels depleted. This is not elitism. It is energetic hygiene, and it is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for everyone whose field intersects with yours. Because the more coherent your field, the more you can offer to every environment you enter. The more radiant your aura, the more powerful your transmission, the brighter your light, the further it reaches, and the more it illuminates. You tend your field not for yourself alone. You tend it because your field is a gift to the world. Let me tell you about something that happened in a research setting that I think about often when I consider what it means to be a conscious radiator. Scientists studying the electromagnetic fields of experienced meditators, people who had spent years in practices designed to elevate heart coherence, found something extraordinary. These individuals didn't just generate stronger, more coherent electromagnetic fields. They generated fields that were measurably different in their structure, more ordered, more complex, more information-rich. And when these individuals entered spaces where other people were present, the electromagnetic environment of the space changed measurably. The fields of the other people in the room shifted toward greater coherence. Their heart rate variability patterns became more ordered. Their nervous systems became more regulated, not because anything was said or done, because a highly coherent field was present and transmitting. One coherent field elevated the entire room. Think about what this means for your life. Think about every room you walk into, every conversation you have, every relationship you inhabit, every environment your field touches. If your aura is generating a coherent, high-frequency signal, if your heart is broadcasting the elevated frequency of your shifted field, every one of those environments receives your transmission. Every person whose field intersects with yours is touched by your coherence. You are not just changing your own life by tending your field. You are changing the quantum environment of everyone around you. You are contributing to the coherence of the collective field simply by being present and radiant. This is not grandiosity. This is quantum mechanics. This is what happens when a coherent field is present in a system of fields. The coherence propagates. It spreads. It elevates. Not through force, through resonance. You are a coherence generator. Your aura is a gift. Your radiance is a service. And now you know it. Now let's talk about what to do with the discomfort. Because there is discomfort in this shift. And if you're experiencing it, I want you to know that it is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is very, very right. When your aura shifts frequency, the first thing that happens is that everything in your life that was calibrated to your old frequency begins to feel the mismatch. This is not comfortable. It is disorienting. It can feel like loss, even when what you're losing is something you consciously wanted to release. It can feel like loneliness, even when the solitude is making space for something more resonant. It can feel like instability, even when what's destabilizing is the scaffolding of a life that was built around a frequency that was never truly yours. The nervous system experiences change as threat. Even welcome change. Even change that is fundamentally liberating. Because the nervous system's primary function is to keep the organism in a state it recognizes. And a frequency shift, by definition, is a move into unrecognized territory, into a state the nervous system hasn't mapped yet, into a configuration of self and world that is new. And new to the nervous system reads as danger, reads as unknown, reads as something to approach with caution or to retreat from entirely. This is why people sometimes have a period of instability after a genuine frequency shift. Why they can feel simultaneously more alive and more anxious, more free and more unmoored, more radiant and more raw. These are not contradictions. They are the simultaneous experience of the new frequency asserting itself and the nervous system's protective response to the newness. The work during this period is not to rush through it, not to perform stability you don't yet feel, not to pretend the discomfort isn't there. The work is to stay in your field, to return again and again to the felt sense of your own electromagnetic signature, to breathe into your heart center, to let your field broadcast its new frequency, even when your mind is still catching up to what your aura already knows. Your field is ahead of your thinking. It always is. Your aura already knows who you are at this new frequency. Your electromagnetic signature has already reorganized around the new coherence. What is still adjusting is the cognitive and emotional architecture, the stories, the expectations, the habitual patterns of thought and feeling that were built around the old frequency and are now in the process of being updated. Give them time. Give yourself grace. And trust your field, because your field knows. Your aura is not confused. Your electromagnetic signature is not uncertain about what it is. It is broadcasting clearly, coherently, at the new frequency. The disorientation you feel is the gap between what your field already knows and what your mind is still learning. And that gap closes. It always closes. As you inhabit your new frequency more fully, as your nervous system builds the map of this new territory, as your life begins to reorganize around the new signal, the gap closes, and what remains is the clarity, the coherence, the luminosity of a field that has found its true frequency. Stay with it. Stay in your field. Trust the shift. Your light is on. It has always been on. And now it is shining at a frequency that cannot be dimmed by the old conditions, cannot be contracted back into the old configuration, cannot be returned to the smallness that was never truly yours. You are radiating something that you chose, maybe for the first time. Let me give you something to carry with you, an integration principle that will serve you every day as you inhabit your new frequency and continue to expand into the conscious radiator you are becoming. The principle is this: what you tend grows. Your aura is a living field. It is not static. It is not fixed at any frequency, even the elevated one you have now reached. It is dynamic, responsive, always in conversation with your attention, your breath, your emotional life, your choices. And like any living thing, what you tend in it grows. What you neglect in it diminishes. This does not mean your shift is fragile. It is not. You have crossed a threshold, and the physics of that crossing are real. But within the new frequency, there is still a spectrum. There is still a range of coherence available to you. And the upper end of that range, the most luminous, most powerful, most radiant version of your new frequency is available to you when you tend your field consciously. So tend it with your breath. Every breath is an opportunity to bring coherence to your field. Every conscious, intentional breath that fills your chest and warms your heart center is adding to the coherence of your electromagnetic broadcast. You don't need a formal practice. You just need the habit of returning to your field, of checking in with your own electromagnetic signature throughout the day, of noticing when your signal has contracted and consciously choosing to expand it again. Tend it with your attention. Where your attention goes, your field follows. When you give sustained attention to what is beautiful, what is coherent, what is aligned with your highest frequency, your field moves toward that. When you give sustained attention to what is fearful, what is lacking, what is threatening, your field moves toward that instead. Not because you are doing anything wrong, because attention is the steering mechanism of your aura, and conscious attention is the most powerful tool a conscious radiator has. Tend it with your relationships. Spend time in fields that elevate yours. Seek out people whose electromagnetic signatures are coherent, whose presence makes you feel more alive, more expansive, more radiant. Not because you need them to be well, because resonance is real. And the fields you spend time in influence the frequency you broadcast. Choose your electromagnetic environment with the same care you would choose any other environment that matters to you. Tend it with your truth. The single most powerful thing you can do for the coherence of your field is to live in alignment with your actual frequency, to say true things, to make choices that resonate with who you actually are rather than with who you have been performing, to let your outer life become an increasingly accurate reflection of your inner signal. Because the gap between who you are and who you are pretending to be is the primary source of interference in your field. And closing that gap, bringing your outer life into alignment with your actual frequency, is the most direct path to the luminous, coherent, powerful aura you are here to broadcast. Your truth is your signal. Your signal is your aura. Your aura is your gift to the world. Tend it. Protect it. Broadcast it. Consciously. Deliberately. With the full understanding of what you are and what your field is capable of. You have been radiating something your whole life. Most of it you never chose. The frequencies that were dominant in your broadcast were inherited, conditioned, accumulated through experiences you didn't design and couldn't have prevented. And for a long time, those frequencies shaped what reached you, shaped what you could observe in the probability space of your life, shaped what reality assembled around you. But something shifted. Your field crossed a threshold. Your aura reorganized. Your electromagnetic signature became something new, something more coherent, more radiant, more aligned with the frequency you were generating before the world taught you to dim it. And in that reorganization, everything changed. Not because you changed your mind, because you changed your signal. And now you know what you are. You are a radiating field of quantum energy. You are a heart-generated electromagnetic broadcast that reaches several feet beyond your body in every direction, carrying information about who you actually are, influencing the fields of everyone and everything it touches, collapsing the probability space of your reality around the frequency you transmit. You are not a passive participant in your life. You are an active broadcast, a conscious transmission, a luminous field that is, right now, in this moment, shaping the quantum environment around you. And you are doing it consciously now. That changes everything. Because a conscious broadcast is infinitely more powerful than an unconscious one. Because a field that knows what it is can direct its radiance with intention. Because a heart that understands its own electromagnetic power can generate coherence deliberately, can tend its own signal, can choose the frequency it broadcasts rather than defaulting to the frequencies it inherited. You don't need to become radiant. You are radiant. You have always been radiant. What shifted is that the things that were covering your radiance, the layers of conditioning, the frequencies of fear, the static of performed identity, have lost their dominance in your field. And your original luminosity is asserting itself freely, fully, without apology. Your old self is gone, not because you lost something, because you found something, because the frequency that was always yours has finally become the dominant signal of your broadcast. Because your aura has reorganized around the truth of what you are, rather than around the accumulated weight of what you were taught to be. And this is permanent. Not because nothing will ever challenge your field again. Not because you will never have moments of contraction or fear or doubt, but because you have crossed a threshold, because your field has tasted its own coherence, because your heart knows its own frequency. And that knowing is now encoded in your electromagnetic signature as a reference point you can always return to. You know the difference now between broadcasting from fear and broadcasting from your actual frequency, between radiating unconsciously and radiating with intention, between living in the cave and standing in the light. And you cannot unknow it. So here is what I want to leave you with, not as a closing thought, but as an opening, as the beginning of the most conscious, the most radiant, the most electromagnetically awake chapter of your life. You are a lighthouse. Your field is always broadcasting. Your aura is always transmitting. The only question that matters now is what you choose to transmit. Choose your actual frequency. Choose the signal that is yours. Choose the coherence that your heart knows how to generate. Choose to broadcast consciously, deliberately, with the full understanding of what your field is and what it is capable of. Choose to be the coherence in every room you enter, the radiance in every relationship you inhabit, the elevated frequency in every environment your aura touches, not because you should, not because it is your duty or your obligation or your spiritual assignment, but because that is what you are, because your light is on. It has always been on, and now you know it. And knowing it, you get to let it shine fully, freely, without the dimmer switch that was never truly yours to begin with. Your aura is active. Your light is conscious. Your signal is clear. You are a radiant field of quantum energy, and now you know it. Welcome to your own light. Shine. Not because you should, because that is what you are. And for everyone in this community who is feeling the resonance of this transmission, who recognizes in these words something they have been feeling in their own field, I want you to know that your recognition is real. The resonance you feel is your field responding to a frequency it knows. The warmth in your chest as you read or hear these words is your electromagnetic signature, confirming what it already understands. You are not alone in this shift. You are part of a field of conscious radiators who are each in their own way crossing their own thresholds, tending their own auras, broadcasting their own elevated frequencies into the quantum field of a world that needs coherence more than it has ever needed it. And the collective field of this community, the combined electromagnetic signature of everyone here who is doing this work, is itself a force, a transmission, a coherence generator that amplifies every individual field within it. If this transmission reached you, consider returning to it in a quiet moment, in the stillness of a morning before the day begins, or in the soft space before sleep when your field is most open and receptive. Or share it with someone whose light needs reminding. When you do, you create a ripple of radiance, activating their awareness of their own field, strengthening both auras through resonance, and adding one more signal to the collective luminosity that is already building in this world. When you tend your aura, you contribute to all of it. When you broadcast consciously, you elevate the collective field. When you shine fully, freely, without apology, you give permission to every other field in your range to do the same. This is how the world changes, not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, through individual fields reaching their thresholds, through auras shifting frequency one by one, through the quiet, irreversible, unstoppable propagation of coherence through a quantum field that responds to every signal it receives. Your signal matters. Your field matters. Your radiance matters. Not someday. Now. In this moment. In the field you are broadcasting at now. Feel your field. Notice what's radiating. Let it be what it actually is. Your light is on. It has always been on. And now you know it.